Book of Joshua. And let's go to chapter 10. Because we keep telling you there's a difference between Israel, say Israel, and Israeli. There is a difference. Okay. When we got Joshua chapter 10, let's start at verse 1. Now it came to what? We don't have it yet? Okay. Old Testament. Right after Deuteronomy. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua. Chapter 10, verse 1. Now it came to pass when Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, had heard how Joshua had taken Ai. Now this individual, Adonizedek, was ruling what city? Jerusalem. This is not the Israelites. You'll see in a minute. Had utterly destroyed it as he had done to Jericho and her king, so he had done to Ai and her king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were among them, that they feared greatly, because Gibeon was a great city, as one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and all the men thereof were mighty. Wherefore Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, sent unto Hoham, king of Hebron, that's 2 kings, and Piram, king of Jarmuth, that's 3 kings, and Jaffa, king of Lachish, 4 kings, and Debir, king of Eglon, 5 kings. Come up unto me, and help me, that we may smite Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua and with the children of Israel. Therefore the 5, anybody have it, verse 5? Please read it with me if you have verse 5. Therefore the what? Of the king of... So the king in Jerusalem, what was his nationality? Amorite. Amorite, according to Genesis chapter 11 and 10, Genesis 10 tells us Amorite was the firstborn of Canaan. Fourthborn of Canaan. So these were Canaanites, which according to King James Zondervan, let me turn to that real quick and pass that around, because it's very important. Genesis chapter 9, verse 25, cursed be Canaan. Their commentary, cursed be Canaan. Some maintain that Ham's son was to be punished because of his father's sin. But Exodus 20 restricts such punishments to them that hate me. It probably better to hold that Canaan and his descendants were to be punished because they were going to be even worse than Ham, servant of servants. Joshua's subjugation of Gibeonites is one of the fulfillments. Noah's prophecy cannot be used to justify the enslavement of blacks, since those cursed were Canaanites who were Caucasians. Give me a minute. It starts right here on the bottom. This is their commentary, Genesis 9:25. Okay, he's going to pass it around so you can read. They're saying that the Canaanites were Europeans. I'm not saying it. That's what they're saying. So now, if they're right, and these are the Bible scholars, you know, scholars, can't argue with them. So these Bible scholars are saying that the Canaanites were in fact Caucasians, so we have to follow that line of thinking, and we're going to go with that, right? So now, if that is the case, then Joshua chapter 10, verse 5, therefore the 5 kings of the Amorites, Amorites are what tribe? Coming out of what family? Canaan. So what race were they? Caucasian. That doesn't mean hate nobody. That's not what we're talking. We're just trying to make sure we understand all of the families. So, because once we understand all the families, then we can understand Africa's relationship to the scriptures. See, we can't determine what our relationship to the scriptures are if we don't understand where everybody came from. You got to know where everybody comes from. If I don't know where everyone comes from, then I can't discover who I really am. And that's part of the problem when you have melting pots. Because melting pots just make it where we're just people. Well, how we get here? Well, you know, slavery and put us on some ships, and that's how we got here. Somebody else said, no, brother, we were the Moors. We were here first. Somebody else said, no, brother, we were the Mexicans, the people of the greater Mexican. Somebody else said, no, man, my people was, you know, Blackfoot. Somebody else said, my people were Blackfeet. Somebody else said, no, I was Cherokee. Somebody said, no, I was Mandan. No, I was Iroquois. No, I was Arawak. No, everybody got something, right? Or somebody else said, no, I identify with Yoruba. No, I'm Ashanti. No, I'm Zulu. No, I'm Mandan. No, I'm Mandinka. No, I'm Denongala. No, I'm Ashanti. And all this confusion and not realizing that the reason we overly identify with their interpretation, when they were putting this together, they knew about your tribal names. See, Daniel, I ain't talking about the prophet Daniel, I'm talking about the tribe of Daniel, or the tribe of Dan. Is there an African tribe today called the tribe of Dan? Yeah. The word Masai, say Masai. Now add the word for life, Messiah. See, so is there a Messiah tribe in Africa? So all of these tribal names that we already had, somebody used and placed these names in this Bible, knowing that in deep down in the crevice of that DNA, that inside of us, that blood cell, that chromosome, an identification with those sounds. Because what draws us to a thing is the how I perceive or interact with that thing. So if I'm trying to enslave a people mentally, as well as physically, but mentally, I must utilize words that genealogically speaking, they would already identify with. To pull them away from what they already had, to make them, because that's a question I'm always asked. Well, what made us, how did we go from pyramids and ziggurats and brain surgeries and eye surgeries and ear surgeries and heart surgeries and water filtration, all this greatness, to now we just don't, nothing? Well, it wasn't something that was done overnight. It was understood that if I can affect how you think, most importantly about yourself and your origin, everything else is easy. If I can get you to disassociate yourself with what you really are, everything else is very easy. So now let's get back here. So now we realize here, therefore, verse 5, Joshua 10:5, the 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem. So the Amorites were ruling in Jerusalem, right? Who's ruling in Jerusalem today? The same Canaanites. And the Palestinians are nothing but Philistinians. The word Palestine is the word Philistinia, because there was no P in the language. It was an F. Philistinia. But they'll say that's our land. The name Philistinia means a migrant. How are you a migrant saying this is my land? The very term migrant means you migrated in. So who was there? Well, when I go to Palestine today, there's a place called Nablus. Nablus. And when I go to Nablus, I find people like this gentleman. Nubian people that are saying, we've been here, but we're no longer in political control. Nablus, Nablus, the city of Nablus. Okay? So now, we learn that. Now let's go to Judges. We mentioned a lot of things earlier. Judges chapter 1 first. Judges chapter 1. And we'll go right to verse 8. Now the children of Judah had fought against Jerusalem, and had taken it, and smitten it with the edge of the sword, and set the city on fire. And afterward the children of Judah went down to fight against the Canaanites, who according to Zondervan are what? Europeans, right? To fight against the Canaanites that dwelt in Hebron. Now the name of Hebron before was Kirjat-Arba, and they slew Shisha and Ahiman and Talma. You follow? So this, who were they going up against? Canaanites. These Canaanites were ruling in those lands. Now let's go back to Isaiah and see what Akhenaten, or we say Akhenaton, because he was teaching atonement, what they were dealing with. Now we're back in Isaiah 19 verse 18. In that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt speak the language of Canaan, and swear to the Lord of hosts, one shall be called the city of destruction. Revelations 9:11 calls it the city of Abaddon, destruction. And in that day shall there be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Tamareh. So there was an altar dedicated to the Aten, to the Adonai, and a pillar at the border thereof. What are the pillars called in Africa? You have a monument in DC that has a pillar, an obelisk. Tekino, we called it. And it shall be for a sign and for a witness unto the Lord of hosts in the land of Tamareh, ancient Africa. For they shall cry unto the Lord because of the oppressors. So the African people were being oppressed, and they were crying unto the Lord, their new Pharaoh, who was coming in, Akhenaten. because of the oppressors, and he shall send them a savior and a great one, Yahshua, Akhenaton's son, right, which was raised as a Messiah. That word Messiah is an African word, Messiah, same name. And a great one, and he shall deliver them. And the Lord shall be known in Egypt, and the Egyptians shall know the Lord in that day, and shall do sacrifice and oblation. Yea, they shall vow a vow unto the Lord and perform it. Numbers chapter 6 talks about the vow of the Nazarite. Say Nazarite. Say Nazarene. Say Assyrian. Say Ansarian. It's the same word, a watcher. All throughout the Bible, Job is called a watcher. Ezekiel is called a watcher. These were the family line of Asaru, Aset, and Haru, the first angelic trinity. And out of that line, Yahshua and the tribes of Israel, Ishmael, and Midiani comes out of that line. That was us. And we're from Genesis 10 to Genesis 1. When you get to Genesis 11, where they talk about the splitting up of the languages, the confounding at the towers of Babel, that's where the isles come in. And that's why in Genesis it mentions that, and all of the coast of the isles. What isles? The isles of the Aegean, because over in Africa we didn't have islands. You follow? Back in Genesis 1, it mentions this river called the Fison and the Gihon and the Tigris and the Euphrates. Well, the Tigris Euphrates runs through ancient Babylon or ancient Sumeria, which is ancient Cushite Babylon, because remember we already established that that land of Shinar, according to the Bible, was established by Nimrod, and Nimrod was the son of Cush, and Cush is Ethiopia, and Ethiopia is in Africa, so Nimrod was an African, so those were African cities. And Fison and Gihon is nothing but the Nile, the white and blue Nile, that runs all the way down through Nubia on down. So that was us, like the Niger River Valley in West Africa. We already existed, and we weren't pagans. The Ashanti to this day blow the 7 ram's horn once a year, which is Revelations. I saw 7 angels stand with the trumpets. Every year the Ashanti gather and do that. Our tribes, we had Sabbath. We lit candles. We just weren't doing it the way the Greco-Romans came in, and the so-called Jews of Russia came in with their interpretation. So now we look like we are converted to Christianity when the first Christ was one of us. We look like we've converted to Judaism when the first Messiah was one of us. And Islam we understand as an offshoot that comes out of us anyway. Let's continue. Verse 22. And the Lord shall smite Egypt, and he shall smite and heal it. And they shall return even to the Lord, and he shall be entreated of them, and shall heal them. Verse 23. In that day shall there be a highway out of Egypt to Assyria. What's Assyria? Ashur. Who established that land? Nimrod, one of the 5 cities. Ashur, Nineveh, Calneh. Okay? And the Assyrians shall come into Egypt, and the Egyptians into Assyria, and the Egyptians shall serve with the Assyrians. In that, and not talking about the Assyrian, the people of Syria today that look European. It's talking about those blacks that I told you, those Africans living in Iraq and in Iran, the original Africans where we ruled those areas before we were subjugated. You can Google them and read about them. In that day shall Israel be, I want y'all to read this with me, verse 24. In that day shall Israel be with the third, shall Israel be the third with Egypt and with Assyria, even a blessing in the midst of the land, whom the Lord of hosts shall bless, saying, blessed be Egypt, my what? The word Egypt wouldn't be there, right? Tamaré, ancient Africa. Blessed be the who? Africans, my people, and the Assyrians, which are your ancient Cushite Babylonians, who are also Africans, the works of my hands, and Israel mine inheritance. These were all black people. Africa has a relationship in the scriptures. How come we never learned about this? I didn't write this. I'm 39. This is way before me. But it's there. And somebody doesn't want us to identify with it. Now, does King James also add a lot of his own stuff in there? Yeah. But are we living in a day and time of the internet and library access? You can pay $4.99 and join the library in London. You don't got to get on a plane and go to London. You just tell them what you're looking for. They find it. Micro scan. They take the microfiche no longer. They scan it, send you a copy right on your screen. You can read it. Leipzig Museum, $5.99. Germany, you register with their museum and their libraries. So you have access to information. And this information is what's going to help to get us in our right minds so that we don't have to feel, because as a conscious person, I grew up, like I said, I went to Catholic school. And then around age 12, I joined an organization. I was Muslim for many years. Learned that Quran inside out in the Arabic. I mean, inside out in the Arabic. Know the Hebrew, know the Greek. But then I said, well, okay, I got all this Catholic stuff, got the Christian stuff, got that. Now I got all this Muslim stuff, that's in my head. Got all this Hebrew stuff, but I'm born in Africa. Now what the heck? I'm confused. Went back and forth, visit my relatives overseas, and they're more Christians than I've ever, oh my goodness, man. I mean, no, really. You go to Ghana, you go to Liberia, you go to Togo, you go to Benin, you go to Gambia, you go to South Africa, and you will stand in a room, and I always laugh when I say it, but it's amazing. I for the first time, I grew up in America, came here when I was 3, and I was always normally the darkest person in the room. You know, I was used to that. But I went somewhere and I was light-skinned. It was the funniest thing in the world, I swear, to look around the room and everybody was purple. And I'm standing there because my dad's purple. Right? And I wish I was purple, but my mother's not purple, so I didn't come out purple. So I'm standing there going, wow, I'm light-skinned, it's all right. You know? But the funny thing is to look up and there's a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, big mural, huge, got to be like 15 feet. And I said, well, how am I going to get through to my people? 5,000 in this church. My dad's standing next to me. He's about that big, right? He's standing next to me, and I'm going, and he says to me, yeah, that's why I said you got to come. Went to Ghana, visit relatives there. Went to church, they're speaking tree. And then I didn't learn tree, right? And they're talking about Jesus. I'm like, damn. Went to Trinidad, you know, hey brother, they're talking to him, Jesus. But damn, with this guy, Jesus, I can't get away from him. We got to go back and look at this Bible again. Because no matter how you cut it, I don't care how deep you talk, how much you talk about New World Order, Illuminati, Empress Council of Nicaea, our people are in the churches, no matter how you cut it. My grandmother goes to church. Today, my mother's mother goes to church. Tomorrow, she'll be in church in Liberia. Guarantee you. She's not sick, she's going to be in the front row. How do I talk to her? Now I can go, Grandma, all that stuff's not real. That's the white man. Yeah, baby, okay. He needs to be saved. Come on now, how many are going through that? Come on, let's be honest. So, is it more important for me to be right when I'm talking to Grandma? Or is it now important for me to figure out how to talk to Grandma in the language that she's going to understand? See, because all of y'all in here, some of you are Christians, some of you are Muslims, some of you are not anything anymore, whatever you are, right? No, that happens. There's nothing wrong with that. But as we're talking, we're giving you things you can research. We're giving you quotes. We're giving you words. We're telling you go online. That you don't argue with. You don't have to agree with it. And I hope that you don't agree with everything we say, because when you don't agree, it makes you more apt to go and look it up. And while you're looking it up to prove it wrong, you end up finding out stuff, come back, tell me something I didn't know. And that's how it develops, that's how it grows. So after traveling, I'm gonna take questions in a minute, I realized that, you know what? It's time to go back and look in this Bible and find those books, because there's 40 books. The book of Jeremiah, the book of Edo the Seer, the book mentioned in the King James Bible that are not found in the King James Bible. And I said, well, where are they? Some say, well, it's the Dead Sea Scrolls. Then they got that, wherever it is, it's passed around here somewhere. I think you have it back there, where they show you, where they're admitting to you where these books are, how they came. Any of y'all looked at it so far? Oh, they're still coming? Okay, right? Where they're talking about how these books come out of African manuscripts. I said, well, I got to go look at these African manuscripts. And once we start looking at them, I said, well, I got to write this for our people so they can have access to the original books of the Bible and understand why we feel such a connection to divinity, but not realizing that our energy is being oftentimes directed towards the wrong spirit force. Oftentimes it's directed towards the Greek divinity and not towards the ancient African principle of the Most High Heavenly One. You follow? So that's why we did the original books of the Bible. This is just the first papyrus. There'll be 19, and they will come out hardback as one Another year and a half, I should be done, if I have any little bit of hair left after that point. But, and when we're doing it, we put with biblical quotes, so everything you're learning, you can find the quotes, so when you're talking to your relatives, they can follow along. Because we have a culture. We should be observing the Shabbat, we call it. Sabbath. But not the way they have taught us. We should be observing, when you say Rosh Hashanah, say Rosh Hashanah. And they spell it R-U-S-H. All right, sometimes they'll put a double H. And they put an S in here, Rosh Hashanah. But did you know nothing but the observant of Rashun Sana, the observant of the original 8 angelic beings called the Rashunat, which the Greeks called the Ogdad. These were all African rituals. And it was observed in a way that was in line with us as African people. And we just have to reclaim it. Then we don't have to feel unconscious, nor do we have to feel brain dirtied. I won't say brainwashed because we're washing your brain now. We don't want to be brain dirty. We don't have to be under this spell of ignorance, nor do we have to give up our consciousness. We can be, as the gentleman says, we can have the consciousness of Malcolm X with the spirituality of Martin Luther King. There is a point where they both meet, where we can be consciously conscious or conscientiously conscious. Conscientiously meaning we can have a system of morals and values, because sometimes we get so caught up in our knowledge seeking that we give up our basic morals and decency of how we treat each other. Because we've all met a sister or a brother who can break down everything you can ever imagine, but their character, is this real? You know what I'm saying? They talking brother this, brother that, and then you, but brother, is that weed? Well, you know, it's herbs from the earth. Okay, that's true. So is arsenic. Arsenic, rat poison, it's from the earth. You want to smoke that too? But you understand? Or this brother is so conscious, but he's beating up on his wife. Well, because he has consciousness, but he lacks conscientiousness. And then other times we see sisters and brothers that are so spiritual in the church or the mosque or the synagogue that they're such a good person, but they lack consciousness and awareness. You know, they'll talk to spirit, Jesus, but then if you mention anything about empowerment of us as a people, I can't get into that. My pastor told me don't talk to. No, what we teach as a tonism, the Coptic church, what we're teaching is conscientiously conscious doctrine, where we can be balanced, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about, having a balanced nature. We always said, when I'm eating chicken, I'm very physical. You ever watch a person eat chicken? Have you ever watched a person eat chicken? Okay. Have you ever watched yourself eat chicken? That's a very animal experience. True? I mean, I'm not saying you may be a vegetarian now, for those who are, but when you weren't, and you sat down with a nice wing, and I use wing for a reason, because so the drumstick don't quite cut it. The wing, we work the tip, and we work between the bone, and sucking and eat that. Come on, don't front, right? So when I'm eating some hot wings, for those who still eat hot wings, when I'm eating some jerk wings, I'm very physical. When I'm praying, I'm very spiritual. When I'm playing with my son, I'm physical. When you pick up a 3-year-old to play with them, they don't care about no spirit. My little 2.5 going on 3-year-old son, he don't care about none of this. He hears us talk it. I'd be typing a book, he'll come climb on my back and play with my ears, stick a finger in my ear, and take this, pull off my head, smack me in the face. He's 3 years old. Guess what? That's what he's supposed to do. And I always tell people, say, oh, leave, come on, if your father's trying to work. Most of the times I'll say, leave him alone. Why? Because we can't say, and this is a big thing, even in my own house, and my wife will tell you, I stress this all the time. I cannot show overt patience with everybody. I coach softball, girls softball. Little white kids, Asian, Mexican, whatever. It's just people. And I am so, when I'm teaching these little 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way up to 13-year-old girls, how to play and how to hit, and the boys, we coach them as well, I am so patient. No, you got to do it like this. No, you got to throw your hands. No, you got to crush the bug. Got to turn your hip. No, head got to stay down. And I'm over. I can't do that with them and then go home and be less than that with my own children. Do y'all understand? Why is it that we as a people, when we're in the street, we're so, thank you, please, yes ma'am, yes sir, and then get home and cuss out our spouse? Isn't that hypocritical? Why do we treat the stranger? And I'm not saying we should mistreat the stranger, so please don't mistake what I'm going to cuss everybody out in the street and be nice at home, right? But why is it we're so conscious of our manners in the street, of please and thank you and yes ma'am and yes sir, and opening the door and closing the door and pulling out the chair and pushing the chair and picking up, no, I'll get that, or helping her. But then we get home, I see a lady coming down the steps with a stroller with her baby. I run back up the steps, I grab it, and I'll come down with, and then I get home, my wife said, can you watch the baby? I ain't watching the baby, girl, I'm tired. It's been a hard day at work. We've lacked conscientiousness. Because however I treat you in the street, I should treat my family even better. My street action should be a reflection of what I am at home, not an act. So many times, because we fall away from the original scriptures, our original African principles of true religious identity, right? So many times, because we're falling away from that, we've fallen out of who and what we are. And that's when we start acting, as the book of Revelation says, doing things in the image and likeness of the beast. 30, 40 years ago, you turned on the news, you heard, man kills 50 people and hides them in the walls of his house. And you said, white. Now you got to go, wait a minute. Damn. And you start saying to yourself, what is going on with Nubians? What has happened that we are gangbanging and raping, and we're doing things we never did before. BBC did a whole documentary how they said in Africa, at one time in Africa, there's no record of bloodshed. We settled our dispute without spilling blood for thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of years because we were able to talk. Now they got us, Africa, there's war in Africa. Well, hold on, now there's 54 nations. All of Africa is not fighting. There's war in some places. But what happened that we went from a people, South America was the same way, Caribbeans, we went from a people who could talk our differences out. Now we kill each other without a second thought. Well, because I don't recognize divinity in him. I don't recognize divinity in her. See, if I don't see a divine presence in this sister or that brother or this sister or that young man or this elder here, if I don't see divinity in him as an elder, just because I know whatever I think I know doesn't mean I have a right to disrespect him. Because he's been around the sun more times than me. So by virtue of that, I bow to that divine being inside of him. Does that mean I'm going to agree with everything he says? No. But I can understand that his experience I will either have to grow into or shut up long enough to let him appreciate what I'm saying. Because you've all been where you're talking to someone younger than you and they say something so profound that you just smile. And they don't know that they just done that to you. Might be a little kid. They just say something, you go, wow, that's deep. So we can all learn from each other. Let's take some questions. Are there any questions? Go ahead.
I have a question dealing with, we can break it down about the Genealogy of Canaanites, Amorites. Being that I came from old school and school a lot, back in '87, I said, when I started studying more science, I started looking at what Prophet was talking about. And I found some things that actually shocked me, because I found that what we call the Amorites were actually people that actually migrated up into those mountainous areas, and they were known ones to be a Hurul, people from the Arabian Peninsula. Then I saw something dealing with Canaanites, and went over to the areas of Palestine and Israel, and you go look at this on YouTube today. They look like us. They say we've been here, we the original Canaanites. So a lot of the things that...
Let me tell you why. When you look at Seth's line, Seth had a son known as Kenan. Okay, This is where the discrepancy comes in. This name, Canaan, which you find in Seth's line, and this name, Canaan, are two different names. Canaan, or the Canaanite, were a Nubianite family. The Canaanite, or the Lebanonites, were Europeans. When we teach about the Amorite, when you say Amor, they'll say love, Amor. But in the Hebrew, it's Am, it means a nation. Amongst the Zulu, they'll say, I'm a Zulu. I am a Zulu. I'm of the Zulu tribe. I'm a Zulu, the nation of Zulu. Amor, right. Am-horite. Horite means a mountainous dweller. When we use the scriptures, it's very important that we go to the language of that particular scripture. If not, because of English phonetics, words can start to sound the same.
Okay, now that makes a lot of sense. Going to the Hittites, I've been looking at a lot of the archaeology. They've been digging up in Anatolia. And all this stuff is us.
Right, because what were the Hittites? They were invaders. They would go in. If you go to the British Museum, what do you find in the British Museum? Everybody else's artifacts. You follow? So, because these people would invade your land and take your artifacts. Why? Because artifacts prove a people's origin. Without your artifacts, it's difficult to prove who you are. So when they had the slogan, the sun never sets on the British Empire, their whole thing was take everyone, German did it, the Germans did it, Leipzig's Museum, they would take everyone's artifacts back to their land. Lorraine's Museum in France, they do the same thing. So when we say Canaanite, we're going biblically to the Hebrew. And we're talking, and there was one of the 11 sons, the Amorite, the Hittite, the Girgasite, the Hivite, one of the 11 tribes of Canaan was called the tribe of Hamith. The Hamith is where you get the word, coming from the word Ham. They were a black seed with straight hair who, wait a minute, who called themselves, because they migrated down into India. If you go and read about Indians' history, you'll find that in India at one time when they had the ancient Harappan civilization of the Indus River Valley, they were Nubians who the Hindus with their caste systems, when they came down from Persia, the Persians, or Aryan, the word Aryan, Sanskrit word meaning nobles, when they came down and were subjugating the people, they called them Dalit, D-A-L-I-T or D-A-A-L-I-T, meaning the untouchables, because according to their Aryan doctrine, black skin was a curse placed on those cast out of nirvana. So they subjugated these people of the Indus River Valley, and they created what was known as the civilization of Hind, H-I-N-D, and they based theirs at the Ganges River. That's your Hamathite. And in India today, there are those East Indians who call themselves Jews and identify with Judaism as it's presented today, and they admit to being of the tribes of the Easterners, which biblically, Genesis chapter 15, are called Cadmonites. Say that name, Cadmonite. And that was the East Indian involvement that goes all the way and picks up in the books of Esther or Ishtar, right? When the king Ahasuerus or Xerxes of the Persian Empire. The Iranians will tell you we're not Arabs. We don't speak Arabic. We are Persians and we speak Farsi. And that Farsi is a part of the Indo-European languages. Again, that's not our greatness. Our greatness precedes that. Though we can still look at the Hamath and say, well, some of that came in amongst us, but that's not the foundation of our greatness. Do you understand? So when we talk about these tribes, biblically or scripturally speaking, we're identifying with those original tribes of the, when you say Mandinka, you're saying Mahdinka. When you say Ashanti, when you say Donongala, when you say Afar, when you say Effendi, these were the original, and we say original 3 groups of 12 tribes. Because if you go biblically, Israel had 12 sons and 1 daughter. Ishmael had 12 sons and 1 daughter. And Midiani had 12 sons and 1 daughter. You follow? That's 36 plus 3, that's 30. There's a whole clan. We say 3 groups of 12 tribes. The Canaanites trick us because they say 11 tribes of Canaan, right? But then they sneak another group in there called the Mitanni, also known as the Hittites. So 11 plus 1 is 12. So the 12 trick, to get the name, in the beginning was words. The trick is this name, dynasty. Say dynasty. See, they'll say the dynasties of Egypt. But dynasty is Dionystos. It's Greek. We as Africans would never have used Dionystos. But which dynasty, according to Egyptian or Egyptology, European interpretation of what we teach, which dynasty fought against the invaders? The 12th dynasty. But if we didn't use the word dynasty, but were in fact tribes, which tribes fought against the invaders? The 12 tribes. But the Europeans, which were Greek and Roman origin, they had dynasties. So we were given the name dynasty, and they took the name tribe. They took the name tribe and applied it to them, like Sweden, Southwest Eden. That's Europe's Eden. Because according to the Europeans, the gods or the angels always come with Swedish, Norway, Norland, Norse gods, the Norse mythology. Sister sitting back there, she did a whole book called Children's Fairy Tales Breed Adult Religions. Of the influence, and if you don't mind, we can just touch on it, the influence of Greek mythology into Norse mythology into it. I'm just give her the mic. It's my wife, and this is her specialty, so I'll give her the mic. All right?
When you're speaking Norse mythology, when you are reading children's fairy tales, fairy tales were originally meant for children. They were scary stories. Very, like how now you'll have outfits on Halloween, and you'll have these whole little Disney fairies. Fairies were scary creatures that stole from children. So it wasn't that they weren't happy little people. They were like little demons. And the whole story of fairy tales is just right now. If you look at all the movies like Red Riding Hood that just came out recently, that's what Red Riding Hood really was about. It wasn't about Little Red Riding Hood just going to see the visit her grandma. It wasn't like that. And so they were novels meant for adults. And where it came from was all of these stories were based on Norse mythology. They were all on the continent of Europe. The whole of the group of Christianity didn't take effect like they did here, or like they projected to us in Africa, though they were the originators of the versions that you hold today, the King James Version, the National Version, all those different versions of the Bible. However, their own people didn't accept it. They wasn't on it. And even up until today, people of Scandinavia, that whole area, they never accepted it because they had their own story, where they, which was, as you mentioned, from children's fairy tales, which they collected and compiled, and they still follow to this day. And a lot of European countries, a lot of the people are going back to that, going back to their original teachings, which is where some of the authors of the fairy tales that you go and research, some are written by, you might have heard the name Hans Christian Andersen, but there were other fairy tales written by the Grimm brothers, and the Grimm brothers were German. And what they were doing was they were trying to compile all of their history and all of their language, the etymology of it, or the origins of it. They were trying to compile it back and get all the different tales that would have been passed down from generation to generations orally, because some of the manuscripts that had been lost, they were collecting all of that so that they can have their heritage back. Similar to what we are trying to do today, back our heritage together. And so this is what also, and you can go to the library, you can look up his name is the Grimm brothers, Jacob and Wilhelm.
Right, William.
They have a whole history and all of the get back into their culture is what birthed the whole Hitler movement, the whole Muslim movement, because that's what they were into. They felt that all the other countries that did accept that did fall under the rule of the Roman Catholic Empire had diluted themselves and fell away from their original history. And so when Hitler was saying that he was trying to breed that superior race or that superior being, that's what he was referring to. He was referring to going back to their Caucasian ancestry and having their race before it was pretty much white on the planet. And many times in the history on this side of it, on side of me, as far as the United States or as far as this part of that time with Hitler, we look at it as he was evil, diabolical, crazy, and he wasn't. However, the reasoning behind what he was doing is what his story is doing. And so that's what we have to realize when we're reading these stories, and not to say don't let your children read or don't expose your children to other cultures or other forms of literature. However, when we do that, we should always make sure that we teach them where these things came from and that it is a part of our world history, but it is not their history.
Any other questions?
Anything else?
Yeah, it's still been clear of the aspect. What I was really looking for more so was like when I was talking about Anatolia, Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talked about the Canaanites and all the different areas.
Mm-hmm.
These people, from my research, were driven out by another force or invaded group of people.
Right. When you say the name Anatolia, remember the Anatolia would later be called Turkey because of Ataturk.
Okay. But what I'm saying, that area.
Right.
But see, when they was digging up the archaeology, the archaeologists digging up the artifacts off that peninsula, there were women with Apatia, men with caps on that you would call today fezzes, all this extra stuff before those people.
Right. We were. Let's make it clear, and we agree on this, brother. We as African people were everywhere. That history has proven that. We were the first to walk the planet. We were the first to give birth. You know, the first living being was the Nubian female. Out of her, everybody else was born. We got that.
We real land. But what I'm saying is, I'm trying to say when you're talking about biblical history,
Right.
I'm not hearing that portion.
Well, because it's not there.
Okay.
I can't interject biblically what I would just like to do, because then I become just as guilty as them. We have to be able to separate biblical history from the secular history of various lands. You follow? In ancient times, we had a religious calendar and a civil calendar. Civil calendar calculated civil events, holidays, laws, statutes, etc. Religious calendars dealt with spiritual events. And it allowed for us to have both sides. So we don't disassociate from any part of our civil history. However, we just can't grab it as we feel and add it into our true spiritual or religious identity. You follow? Because what will happen is then what happens to the individual who comes across the Bible scholars like Zondervan and Key Study and certain other scholars who will say, no, the Canaanites are Caucasian. For years, Europeans taught the Canaanites were black, who were cursed as Ham's seed to be black. This was black churches taught this for years. I'm talking about 1800, 1920, 1910. Most black churches were teaching that blacks were the result of the curse of Ham. All right, now here we are in 2011, and we've got it to where even now the European is now having to admit, no, it is not, we're not, the Nubians are not the seed of Canaan. That's in fact talking about Caucasians. And they're proving it the same way. They look at the word Canaan, lowlander. They look at the curse of leprosy from Leviticus 13 and 14. Leviticus 13 describes yellow thin hair you and I today call blonde hair. It gives a description of the skin, etc. Now I do this and I teach my 13 or 14-year-old son that no, these Canaanites were really Nubians, and then he goes and he comes across this at the university level. He's now confused. You follow? So what we say is, like you're doing, give the specific places, and then the people can research the civil history of the respective lands. Were we in Anatolia? Yes. Were we in Ireland? Yes. Were we in the British Isles? yes. Where weren't we? However, everywhere we were, all of us weren't always good either. Let's not lie. Yeah, let's not go around just pick everything black. Black, that's me. Ooh, they killed everybody. I don't want that one. Because there were some black tribes that you be like, nah, we ain't gonna identify with that group. Is that real? That's just true. There were some tribes that you'd be like, no. The brother, what about that one? No, that wasn't us. They were mixed. Isn't that what we say? Come on, tell the truth. Anything bad, we will run from it quick. So that's why I'm saying we have to be careful when we speak in scripturally, stick to what the scriptures say, define the words, look at the Hebrew, look at the Aramaic, look at the Greek, look at the hieratic, look at the hieroglyphs, the cuneiform, whatever language, look at the languages and say what's there. Because if we teach what's there, then we don't have to worry about later on being made to look like we didn't know what we were talking about. And that's because that's what the goal is always going to be when it comes to us. When there's a gentleman named Tim Wise, Timwise. Type him in on YouTube. He is a European, Caucasian American, and he speaks more black consciousness than, I mean, literally, when you hear him talk, if you just listened and didn't look at the screen, you're like, man, that brother bad. And then you look at the screen and go, and he's like, what I'm saying, and you see his audience, I'm talking about 10, 20,000 white folk clapping, and he's saying the same stuff we're saying, or Farrakhan, or different teachers, and they're clapping Tim Wise. And he says, yeah, you'll clap for me. But if a black person stands up here and says the exact same lecture, you'll call him a demigod. You follow? So we are conscientiously conscious enough to understand we are still up against the beast. So when we are dealing with the beast, let the scriptures speak, let the logos, the languages speak, research, present it. See, I don't have to say white man this, white man that. I don't have to do that. You know why? Guess why? I'm too busy trying to make sure what we got to do. Because see, I always ask brothers and sisters in the consciousness movements, whatever group you're affiliated with, how many engineers have we produced? No. From the conscious movement. Can the conscious, I'm not talking about Imhotep, we built the pyramids, and I got that, Ben Carson, got all that. I'm talking about if I sit with a Nation of Islam, or a Nawapian, or a Moor, or whatever, we got all the conscious groups. We put all the conscious groups at this table, long table. However many conscious groups there are, we put a chair for everybody. Get your representatives, sit here. Ready? First question. Have you produced a doctor from your organization? Not did you convert a doctor? Don't be so shrewd. Have you taken a little girl, a little boy, raised them up, they become a doctor? No. Engineer? No. Agriculturalist? No. Sound engineer? No. Okay, what have you produced other than what you're talking? Because see, what I'm talking can sound good, but if we're not produced, see, when you speak to a Jewish person gets hit by a car, they call an ambulance. Some guys jump out the ambulance. They got a yarmulke on, as they call it. We call it kufi or kupa. And they have these little locks, and they wear in the black, and they got the little fringes hanging, and they jump out the car, and they speak in Yiddish, and their ambulance has Hebrew writing across it, and they take them to a Jewish hospital, and then a Jewish doctor comes and looks out for them. Is that real? So all of us conscious groups, we got a lot of stuff we can talk. We can talk about the Muslims, we can talk about the Bible, talk about the Quran, talk about the Mexican Empire, the Moors. We got all that. How many doctors, engineers, scientists, agriculturalists, botanists, architects have you produced? Zero. And that's why we're still in this condition. See, it's the responsibility of a conscientiously conscious organization to push education. To make sure that little boy has a chip on his shoulder. And those two little boys have a chip. Our children, I should tell you, we teach our children to have a chip on their shoulder. Why were there more Nubian doctors being produced in the 1950s and 60s than today, when we have more opportunities today? Because we don't have anything to prove anymore. See, we're not raising our children to have a chip. See, back in the 50s, in the 40s, in the 30s, you had a chip. I got to become a doctor because they think we can't do it. They think we can't be an engineer. They think we can't. And so you were trying to prove to the world that you're worth something. Now, we're so busy talking doctrines and information that he don't have a chip on his shoulder. You got to teach your children. No, you are black, African, Latino, whatever, everybody got a thing they like to grab to. And the world don't think you're smart, and they don't think you're no good, so you got to prove them wrong. If a white kid gets a B, you got to get an A+. That's what we teach ours. And we tell them from little, you're going to be this based off of what we see. If you're always playing with blocks and building things, guess what you're about to become? An architect. And what type of degree are you going to get? PhD in engineering. In our house, none of our children, is this true? I will not accept anything less than a PhD. Why? Because with a PhD, you can travel anywhere in the world and establish your own institute. See, Dr. Ben Carson can say, we performed the first brain surgeries. And they couldn't argue with him. You know why? Because he's the world's best neurosurgeon. See, when you're the world's best neurosurgeon, who's created a way where during brain surgeries, the brain doesn't bleed out. If you stand up and say, I came up with this because of in my dream, my ancestors from Africa came to me, the world can't argue with you. But when you're standing on the corner with your pants hanging off your butt and you say, we're the first brain surgeons, yeah, sure. And that doesn't mean the brother standing on the corner is wrong. It just means that we have to realize everything that we say, how about we start backing it up? Marcus Garvey was 1913. It's been almost a century, and we are still talking the same thing. See, Constantine, when he set up the Roman Catholic Church, the Catholic Church, do they separate church from science? Nope. You know how you know they don't? Because there's a St. Joseph's University, and there's a St. Joseph's Hospital, and there's a St. Joseph's Cathedral. They do research. They're the ones splitting the atom. So, I say that to say, if all of that comes out of atonism, or out of African true religious identity, then we've got to change the course. We just can't set up a church. We have to set up a religion. Atonism is not a church, it's a religion. A true religious identity. What does true religious identity mean? A religion I can identify with truthfully. And it has to encourage every sister who joins our church, you're going to school. Well, I don't know what I want to be. Good, we'll tell you. Go do nursing. Go do radiology. Go do obstetrics. Go do, oh, you don't know what to do, don't ask me, because I'll find some young men, remember Donovan and Chris? We don't know what to do, go become engineers. And they're now engineers. They got their bachelor's, working on their master's now. Why? Now, that doesn't matter if you're a part of what we're doing later. I don't care if you decide 10 years after, I don't want to be that no more. You know why I don't care? We still have another Nubian nurse or doctor or engineer or agriculturalist or botanist or architect. Y'all understand what we're saying? Or a tailor or seamstress. If you're a seamstress, don't just be, I make clothes at home. Go to the school and get that tag on your name so that when you design, they can't push you away. Does everybody understand what we're saying? That's the real conversation. Yes, Africa's relationship to the scriptures, but that relationship was based off of certain teachings of science. We talked about Jesus healing the man. He was a pharmacist. He understood the chemical composition, or an herbalist at least. That's what we have to do. Every child that you come in contact with, you should put a chip on their shoulder. If I'm coaching baseball or softball, I got white kids on the team. But if you black, I pull you to the side. Look, let me explain something to you. And I really do. You're black. And they don't think you can play this game. And the reason we started coaching, she coaches with us. When we moved down to Florida, we had come back from Ghana, moved down to Florida. And my oldest two at the time were 9. And they played baseball that year. And the oldest one asked the coach, white coach, Scott, said, I want to learn to pitch. And he says to my son, oh, man, pitching is hard. Oh, you're not ready. It's too hard. It's going to be difficult for you to learn. Oh, whoa, wrong dad. Time out. Offsides. I said, don't ever tell him that. I said, because your son is no smarter than him. So if he can learn the pitch, so can he. Next year, what I said, I'm coaching. And I haven't stopped since. Any child of mine playing on the team, I'm going to be right there. If you ice skating, I don't know how to ice skate, but I'll be the first dad with shoes on, the broom to keep balance. I'm going to be out there with you. Because we have to stop our children from looking up to everyone other than us. Because I remember growing up, the teacher was European, and my coaches were European, and the principal was European, and the manager at the supermarket was European, and the newscaster, and what does that do to the mind? Then you go to church, and it's reinforced even more, because now he's up there, hey, me again. We have to reverse that. So we teach brothers in this room, sisters in this room, get involved in your local little leagues. Football, basketball, baseball, soccer. Volunteer. If for no other reason, if it's 11 kids on that team and there's only one Nubian, that one Nubian has someone they can look up to. And those 11 kids that aren't Nubian, what are they learning? That they can be told what to do by another Nubian. Let me say it again. See, when I'm coaching and I got 13 girls on this team and only 3 are Nubian, those other 10 little white girls are being told what to do by a Nubian. And that's very important for them too. Because many of them will grow and think Nubian can't tell me what to do. And if I don't fix them, and I only focus on fixing my 3 will still have to contend with those 10. And numbers have their advantage. So I got to take what he's done to us and reverse it. Become the face. It sounds crazy to some of you, but if you think about what I'm saying, those who don't want to try it, doesn't matter. We'll keep doing what we do. But for those who are hearing what we're saying, the Japanese were bombed back to the Stone Age, true or false? And I'm not talking Hiroshima and Nagasaki only. I'm talking about World War II. They flattened the islands of Japan. So how is it that 50 years later, they were on the G8? They took everything they saw that the West had, told their kids, you're going to be an engineer, you're going to be a scientist, you're going to be a this, you're going to be a that, and you're going to be a this. And in 50 years, without a standing military, for all the Nubians who like to say, well, brother, what's going to happen when the white man try to stop you? The Japanese did it without a military. Because they were not allowed, after World War II, to have a sitting or standing military. With no resources. But they knew. See, if you can take this year, Little League World Series, the European representative came, not Europe, the not Asian, Saudi Arabia's group. Middle East and Africa, right, MEA, Middle East and Africa. This year and last year, the team from Uganda, living in the slum, they won and was supposed to come and represent, but there's something with their visas, so Saudi Arabia came. Okay. But the point I'm getting at is, see, when you live in the West long enough, you start to think that everything you learn doesn't have a purpose. You're not important. You follow? Because if I'm living in the West and I have a carpet company, I'm competing with thousands of carpet companies. But if I take that same basic knowledge to any country in the Caribbean, Latin America, Africa, I'm the carpet company. I'm creating jobs. If I'm doing baseball, I don't think I'm important. But if I establish a little league in any Caribbean, Latin America, and African country, not only do I have the minds of the children, like we have a school in the Bahamas, it was open 2 weeks ago, K through 12, 300 students, and they're learning science and math, and it's a real school, uniform, and just like in a Catholic church, except on every wall is this with a black guy on it. And no. So go to our website, you'll see, we'll put on the link. And we're going to do it in Liberia, we're going to do it in Ghana, we're going to do it different places as we are able to financially. But the point is, the missionaries were able to invade your land, right? So why not take that same structure and re-invade your land? Do y'all understand? Some of you understand what I'm saying. Some of you are like, what are you talking about? You don't beat a person by thinking you can do everything opposite to them. The Japanese took baseball, went and set up their own baseball in Japan, and now American professional sports, Major League Baseball, pays millions of dollars to their league to be able to get people to create Japanese idols. Isn't that strange? When 50, 60 years ago, the Japs, and they were derogatory terms, and everybody in America hated the Japs. Now they're at Seattle cheering Ichiro and cheering Suzuki and cheering. How did these people do that? How did the Indians do it? I don't mean the Native American Indians, I mean the Indians. They were ruled by the British Empire for a long time. And now they got all the technology they're producing. How did the Jewish people do it? And yeah, they killed the Palestinians. I got that part, and I'm not agreeing with what they did as far as that. But how is it that the Jews don't forget the Holocaust? Every time they get a chance, Holocaust, 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 Holocaust. And I love the fact that they do that, because it allows me to keep remembering what we went through. Because if you say, well, brother, why you got to always talk about it? The day the Jewish people stop talking about the Holocaust is the day I'll start talking about our kidnapping and enslavement and colonization. And I know they're never going to stop, so